Hey guys, Dave from Nerdarchy, for nerds, by nerds. Hanging out with this nerd.
Nerdarchy is dead.
Hey, your game is ended. Your dice have been bagged. Your books have been shelved. But does your D&D story have to end there?
Jump down the description below where you can sign up for Nerdarchy the newsletter. Get weekly gaming tips as well as learn how to game with us.
All right, today we want to talk about D&D stories and that we create at the table and how much they mean going beyond the gaming session itself.
So, I mean, if you look at the average gamer, like they've all got stories to tell, and you can sit down and just have conversations. And I'm certain if you've been following our channel, you know some of these stories almost as well as we do, because we've shared the same thing over and over again, because they are so meaningful and so built into who we are as nerds, as gamers, and to us it's just awesome.
It becomes this great bonding experience between a group of friends or even strangers sometimes, right? You develop these stories that you can tell later on from a gaming session, whether it's your home group with people you've known all your life, new people you just met at the gaming store, at a gaming convention, and they just stick out, right? You may not even remember the person's name, but you'll remember maybe the name of their character or the things they did in your game. Like I remember we did our first con as the Nerdarchy Philly Games Con, right? And that was probably 2-3 years ago at this point.
It's almost 4.
And that's where we met Natalie. She ended up later playing in one of our online games. But, I just remember her being in that game and playing a bard, and she would always try and do the bardic knowledge. And she kept failing her checks. But immediately went into a bullshit story with the character about whatever the piece of lore was that the character was talking about. And it would be completely wrong, but it was awesome and hilarious at the table.
Yeah, and I've gamed with people at a recent con, and because of the theme of the game, he latched on to another character's story because he thought that was pertaining to the main plot, and he thought I must have slipped a note to the player and have him insert this because of such and such, and like he was wrapped up on this idea, and he kept coming back to it over and over again. And like once it was over and we had this conversation, he's like, oh man, I really thought you slipped him a note, even though it was his own kid. Like he had no idea that there wasn't this thing going on, because all it takes is the DM just walking past another player at the table to think that a note might have changed hands.
Now, I believe it was Doug was telling me he saw a study that actually says your brain doesn't differentiate between the experiences you have in the game and real life. You logically know, but those emotions that you feel from the game, mm-hmm. they're real. Like your brain doesn't know the difference that it's fake.
Well, when you get wrapped up in it, like the tension of how the combat is going, or like you're waiting on this one specific thing, and you're waiting, and you build these things up, and some people play session after session after session over the course of years, and they're waiting for this culmination, and when it gets there, it's like, oh my god, this is amazing. Other times, like you see streams online, and everyone is looking at that die roll to know what's gonna happen. And some people really get so caught up and so invested in it that like they get stressed out. It's like, oh my god, is he gonna live? Is he gonna die? Because it can be done on just that one die roll. These kind of things happen.
The D&D stories that we develop and create, in some ways they start becoming more important than things in real life to us. And and from another angle of not only do you get to connect with people you just met because you're gaming with them, but people you're not gaming with, people you run into that you realize they're into gaming, and you're like, oh, you D&D? Yeah, I D&D. We all D&D. And next thing you know, you're swapping stories about your characters and things that have happened in your games and your dungeon masters and other, NPCs you love and magic items you found and monsters you fought, and all of a sudden you've got this deep connection with a stranger, you know. So it brings people, these stories bring people together that even know each other, and even though we maybe didn't share these stories together at the same table, like we're all D&D players and we can all connect.
There's a camaraderie and there's an understanding. 9 times out of 10 when we go places, whether it be at a conventions or you just meet someone locally, they're ready to just sit there and tell you what's going on in their current game, or they're ready to tell you about their favorite character. It's there in the back of their mind, the forefront of their brain is like, oh my God, you understand this. This is a passion of mine. I need to share it with you. And like, there's a joy that just isn't typically expressed with other things. Like, I don't see the same passion in other hobbies. I mean, it might be out there, maybe because I don't express the same things for sports that others do, but I just don't see that same level, in other things.
We just look at them like, they're doing something weird over there. I don't know what it is. It's sports ball. They're talking about sports ball.
So like,
don't make eye contact.
So like, I can look back over the many years, and as I've said before, we've shared, many different stories. So like, we're not going to repeat any of those. In Wayback Machine, I had a Warforged character, and in that third edition there were these Warforged components, and I not only was interested in having all of them, but I wanted to make my own as well, and I came up with this massive list. There was no way, unless we played this mega game that went to 20th level, maybe beyond, that the DM would have allowed me to get all of these things. But I'm like, I want extra arms, I want a tail, I want wings, I want these other things. And it was crazy stuff that I was looking into. And he started having, or he wanted to make this place, since Warforged in 3rd edition didn't sleep. He was all about like, well, can I make some place that Warforged can go at night, that they can just
maybe a place they can call their own.
Indeed. So like,
where everyone knows their name.
I don't know about all that. So this was Gears, and I just
you know what Gears rhymes with, don't you?
Beers?
No, cheers.
Cheers.
I'm sorry.
Same along the same lines.
I couldn't help it. But that was the cool thing about that character too, Ted, was the fact that you took him and you not only like you had this weird stuff you wanted to do, but you also wanted to create a church and religion and spirituality for this constructed race that didn't really have like deities of their own.
And I just thought it was a great way to not only love this character, but to have him impact the world that he lived in. And who knows, had that campaign gone on for a serious full-fledged 20 levels, like this character would have made so many changes to the Warforged in that Eberron game that like this would have been a major...
Or got murdered by the Lord of Blades, one or the other.
Well, I mean, I don't think he would have gotten murdered. Like he might have been, convinced to join them, because that's the other place that Warforged could go.
It's true.
Or he could have been a spy for the Lord of Blades. Like they could have been so many different directions that could have gone.
Yeah, I thought Gears was a little more goodly though. Lord of Blades, not so much.
Yeah,
he's only goodly towards Warforged.
But he was Warforged, so I doubt he would have gotten murdered. But however. So one great thing, when there's rules for creating things, and I know 5th edition has not gone down that road in any way, shape, or form, and pretty much is like, yeah, do what you want in your own game. At the onset of 3rd edition, when this was happening, I'm like, I'm all about that. So I made Zarsox, and in-game and at the table, this guy was a major annoyance to the table. He was a cleric sorcerer who was all about magic and magic items. And if you've ever seen those little, like, party lights and the things, and it's like, oh, you walk by and it makes sound and lights up. This is what this guy decided to make. So in Dave's basement, which is where we gamed at this point in time, he had one of these little crystal ball like things with a little light sensor on it. And every time you walked by, it would crackle with lightning and make the sound of thunder.
Yeah, when it was just like static electric balls, and you could also touch it; it would do stuff
Right.
too. Yeah.
Well, I had, craft wondrous item, and this guy, that was the first thing he made. So I took it off the gaming shelf and I would keep it at the table. And it did not take long before, like, every session I'd be playing with it, totally in character, because that's what I'd be doing, and someone would come and just grab it out of my hands, put it back on the shelf, and say, "No, Ted, don't touch."
You're done, Ted. You're done. That's enough.
But, like, it totally was what the character would do, and he would fiddle with magic, because it's like, well, this is something that I made. So, like, I'm certain that he, had all kinds of issues on the trail, getting annoyances with, people in the party who just were so fed up with what this guy did. But oh man, I would just take every magic item creation feat as we gain levels, and he was just a blast to play. Totally insane.
How can I make a new annoying magic item that won't be useful at the table?
But I mean, he would make other stuff that totally was. But like that was he wanted to live magic. It was something that was all encompassing in his life. Totally based him off of Black Mage. So you've got the the hood up and the pointy hat on. It's like everything magic-y was what this guy was about.
I feel like over the years with our group, I've only had like 2 characters I played for any length of time. With most of my time being as the DM, I played my gnome illusionist, who later got involved with shadowmancy, but then he was murdered and it didn't matter anyway. Like with that DM with Steve, he allowed him to stick around long enough for me to just really dig on him. There's a third character.
Did he die at the end?
Oh, he absolutely died early. Yeah, I had to come back and start a new character.
Oh, okay.
Then my Chaos Dwarf, he was a lot of fun. He was a cleric of chaos, and he eventually willed Chaos Dwarves into existence through adamantly just professing that they did exist, and there were more of them out there.
Well, I mean, you had Core, but we've talked about him a couple of times.
Yeah, and then Core is the other one. So, like, those are the 3 characters that I played for any length of time, for a decent amount of sessions, I would say. And then Core was my first 3rd edition character.
In Ryan's game.
Yeah, in Ryan's game. And the thing that was cool about him was, like, really getting to explore 3rd edition for the first time and develop a fighter with a fighting style and all about using like spring attack and reach weapons and mobility on the battlefield.
So the great part about that character was that he was a fighter that wasn't on the front lines.
He was, but then left. Then he was, and then he left. Yeah.
So that allowed my character to pretty much just sit there and eat the damage, but didn't matter to him as a barbarian druid, not a big deal.
Yeah, so I mean, those were a lot of fun. Like with that character, he was a quarter orc.
Yeah, cool.
He was just human, but I played him as being having some orc blood in there. Had him look a little bit different,
slightly off-color skin, and he still had the tusks.
Yeah, little tiny tusks. I mean, orcs would laugh at him, and the yellow eyes.
Yeah, I forgot about the yellow eyes.
Yeah, but that was a lot of fun. That was a lot of fun, and like you're always gonna think of those characters fondly. And before the group, though, I had Derek Woodstalker, and that was from my teens, and he was a wood elf fighter druid. So I've always been kind of fond of druids, from a wee lad.
From a wee lad. So my last character I'm going to talk about is Arcanal. And the 3rd edition split where you could multi-class and take like the full levels of things, as opposed to I'm going to gain a half a level here and a half a level here with 2nd edition. It's kind of weird. He was a rogue wizard, and he was all about dungeon delving, essentially. So like his magic was used to augment his thief abilities, and he was ready to go in and disarm traps and have a lot of fun. I didn't play him as long as I would have liked, but I think like he really was built as like the perfect dungeon delver, and like I would have liked to have played him a lot longer than I did.
That kind of makes me think of the dwarves that me and Steve played.
Uh,
That did not see quite enough, but they were kind of obnoxious together.
was that single session that we played?
Yeah, yeah, that would have been. They were just a bad combination for any GM, I think. But then from the GM side, we have a bunch of stories. But I
But
think
before we get to that, I think we're gonna get into a little promo here.
yeah. So this video is sponsored by our Dungeon Master Goblin, who has his own stories to tell and tell and tell over and over again. You can find him on Nerdarchy merchandise over at the store at nerdarchy.com, and there will be a link in the description below, so you can go check out our Goblin Dungeon Master.
Available in a bunch of different colors, including tie-dye. And now back to your regularly scheduled program.
So you had a story, a DM story you wanted to share.
All right, so I've talked about part of this story before. That I ran a game that was based off of the Dark Sun novels, The Tribe of One, and I thought it was a lot of fun exploring the world, because when you've got a game where we're not going to get into the thick of combat and the characters are there to just explore the world, you get to do so many cool things. And one of these encounters, the players come across, the character in this case comes upon a pair of martial artists and some spectators, and they find out from the spectators that once a year these combatants come to this peak, to this mountain range, to try and figure out who is the better martial artist. And I described both combatants as humanoid, but very much not human. One was like insectile and one was something else. And the something else moved with like blinding speed, but the insectile had multiple limbs, so it was attacking with much more vigor, but the other one was able to move fast enough to block them all. And they seemed perfectly matched, and they were fighting for like a ridiculous amount of time, much more so than I would probably do in this day and age.
8 days they were fighting for.
So it's like, you have this, ridiculous concepts. And in a world that, again, I had this like pseudo based on Dark Sun with like blasted landscapes and that kind of stuff. Like you get to create these, beautiful picturesque scenes that can impact your players. And when you're the GM, you've got the ability to literally insert whatever it is that you want. And with the idea that you can blow your PC's minds with different things, be it horrific designs or beautiful designs, the DM has all the power when it comes to the visual aspect. And as you describe something, depending upon how in depth or how vague you want to be, you're going to create different pictures in your players' minds. Person sitting on your right might see one thing, while the person on your left might see another, depending upon how they're going to interpret it. And when you share these stories afterwards, you can find out these differences and be like, oh man, I didn't see it that way, or I totally saw it that way, but not that way. And it's going to bring you together as you discuss and see how each person is going to interpret your material.
I think like when I think of DM stories in my mind, I just play through like a montage of monsters that get one shotted. Like because they're like always these like unexpected fun moments. Like I mean, we've told the story about the Hydra, the draconic half fiendish Hydra stepping over the wall and failing a saving throw that should have been easy for it to pass. Or the time that one of Ted's characters is able to go incorporeal and go inside my monster, and then in mid swing go corporeal and just tear it apart from the inside out. And mind you, they always accuse me of being antagonistic DM, but I would let them do things like that.
Well, I mean, you for many of us, like, we're our teacher as a DM. So I mean, we wouldn't be the DMs without your DMing. So yeah, I mean, even though we say that every once in a while, considering some of the challenging encounters that you have put forth, it still is those stepping stones, and is those leadership moments that have made us the DMs that we are.
When I look back, it's like I like to look at all the different NPCs that we've made along the way, and characters that that your players want to interact with like over and over again. Whether it's because Ted's character was punted into a tree and got killed, and and then all of a sudden, he gets resurrected, from a druid, and then the character has this connection to that grove, that place, that person, and he has this deeply spiritual experience as well. So we get to do things like that and share those experiences with each other through these games, and we get to retell them over and over again.
Some of those NPCs, they wind up taking turns that you weren't really expected. In my game, I mean, you guys have, if you've watched my Griffin Gaff game, they went to Crathan Gulch, Dave's character's homeland, and they wind up meeting Dave's uncle, Uncle Angus. And I expected it to just be hey, here's a teaching moment. Here's a way for one of the players expressed an interest in learning rune magic, which was the prestige class that had just recently been recently come out in the Unearthed Arcana at that point in time. And I'm like, oh, well, here's a way that I can insert that. You can get a teacher. You can, when you level up, be able to take that, be, a really great thing.
Little did Ted know.
and it got twisted. It became like this violent, evil thing. And the player who sought, who sought a typical, or who sought a teaching moment, wound up
apprenticeship, essentially.
Wound up turning on this character because of a specific phrase that the character said. And I was trying to try to create this dwarf to be just very dwarfly. And the player or the character, I still don't know which,
took offense
majorly. It got into this heated discussion. A threat was made that I, as the DM, don't know whether it was being made towards that NPC or me personally. And I had to laugh it off because it was so stressful, because I couldn't make that determination.
And it ended in a duel.
The whole thing ended in a duel, which the player lost, because I'm sorry, I'm not going to have a player who was looking to learn from a character lose in the duel. He had to be more powerful. And, I had to snap a decision whether that was going to be a thing or not. I wasn't going to kill the character, because that would just totally be wrong of me.
Maybe.
Well, however, my decision. But it was interesting, and it was fun to see how things played out. Sad to see that how things went, and I had to essentially remove the possibility. The player eventually got on speaking terms with the NPC, but only barely.
And and it goes back to saying how sometimes these moments in the games, they become larger than life. But hey, maybe you got your own stories and you want to share them with us. We got a place where you can do it, and that is down in the comments below. While you're down there, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe.
You can check us out on Facebook.
So until next time,
stay nerdy.